Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael de Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. And this week I wanted to answer a question that I know a lot of people have before they come to Italy for the first time, whether it's to move here, to come on vacation, to study here, whatever it may be. One of the first questions is always, is Italy safe? But before I answer that, and before we get too much deeper into this video, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like and share it with your friends, that would be greatly appreciated, as it does help out the channel. And if you would like to help out the channel in another way and to help make videos like this possible, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon to help on a monthly basis, rafaeldefuria.com/support to help out just once, and for shirts, baby onesies, mugs, and more with Italy-centric designs like That's It, I'm Moving to Italy, Pizza, Pasta, and Amore. You can go to rafaeldefuria.com/NYAG gear. As per usual, when we dive into some of these deeper subjects, it is time to yet again bust out the glasses because I have a lot written down. Yes, these are some very tiny lines, so I could fit 3 pages worth of text onto 1 page. And not only do I want to answer the question, is Italy safe? But some of my favorite tips for staying safe and for just kind of getting around a little bit better and making things a little bit more smooth here. But overall, the TLDR version is, I would say, yes, in general, Italy is actually pretty darn safe. But if you're going to places like Naples, Rome, any city in Italy, you will find it is like a city anywhere else. You need to be careful. You need to watch your surroundings. You need to be hyper aware of your pockets and your money and your belongings, where everything is. Out of some of the biggest cities that I've been to, Rio de Janeiro, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, London, Hamburg, Madrid, Lisbon, Milan, Rome. If you were to ask me the place where I probably felt the most comfortable, the safest, I would say my best experience was without a doubt in Rome. And even if you're talking about another Italian city, or Sicilian city, I should say, Palermo, I felt quite safe there. But of course, when you're in a city, you want to make sure that you are very careful. And what I have to say in this video wouldn't just be the tips that I would give to someone who's looking to come to Italy, but somebody who's going to really anywhere. Even if you're traveling in your own country, some of these tips may be good to follow as well. A lot of people complain about that they'll find in Italy a lot of pickpocketing and small, kind of more minor crimes. And yeah, that does happen, but that does also happen in other places. You just have to be aware of some of the potential things that can happen so you're able to avoid them better. You will definitely find scams and scammers that target tourists, especially English-speaking tourists or American tourists or people who they think might be American tourists. Sometimes Americans, Canadians, and Brits all get lumped together and we get confused for one another. Italians, for whatever reason, seem to first think that I'm either Canadian or British before they think I'm American. But whatever. But for keeping your belongings safe, I would say there are a few basic things that are worth purchasing to help keep your belongings really tight and close to you. The number one thing, for those of you who've been watching my channel for a while, might remember that I've talked a bit about having a money belt, and they are one of my favorite things. There are 2 different types of money belts. There's kind of like a more kind of money belt that's a little bit larger, and it almost looks like a fanny pack, but you wear it kind of closer to your body. And then there's another type, which is my personal favorite type, which is a belt that has a pocket around it. And I personally think that is a really great way of being able to carry cash quite safely. The difference is the actual belt that will go through like your belt hoops, that one you won't be able to carry your passport in, whereas the one that actually stays up tight, close up against you, generally in those you will be able to put your passport in there. But if you are someone who gets quite sweaty, then that might not be the best idea, and you may want to figure out a different way of carrying your passport. But what I'll do is I'll put a link down in the description below to an Amazon shop. I'm not selling anything on Amazon, but these are some of the things that I recommend. And just for full disclosure, if you do use the link below and make a purchase through Amazon, that will help the channel out. I'm not saying you have to buy any of these things. These are just some of my recommendations, because people sometimes do ask me if I'm traveling or if I'm purchasing something, which choices I would make. And so some of my choices that I would make are down in the description below. The biggest thing though is that if you're traveling with a backpack, you have to be very careful with those because those are very easy to get into if they have the pockets that are open in the back, like a normal backpack would, where you can just kind of open it from the top or from the sides. But my favorite backpacks are actually a camera bag made by Lowepro. I have one here that I've had for years. I don't know if they still make this model. This is the Lowepro Flipside 300. Well, it's a little bit big for this for this framing, but I absolutely love this thing because you can only access it from the back. And so if you're walking around, you can pretty safely carry this on your back, and the only way really into the bag is right behind you, so nobody's going to be able to jump in there to grab your camera or anything. It does have this side pocket where you can stuff some non-important things, maybe like a lens cloth or a cleaning brush, but that's stuff that's much more easy to replace. But if you are going for just a normal backpack, I do have another type of backpack, and me being a camera guy and someone who has had to travel with cameras for work, what I end up purchasing usually kind of is more geared in that direction. So the other backpack, which can be accessible from the front, well, actually from the back, front, back, whatever it might be. Oh, it's a little bit tough to see just because of the framing, but this one is accessible from the top, and also it has this front pocket here. But what I do is I just keep the zipper locked. I don't know if you can even hear me. I'll switch over to this side. I keep the zipper locked up. I just thread it through the zippers. It works great. Let me just open this up and I'll show you. So you just open it. It's got different places for where you can put your camera. But the thing is with this is that even if you have a lock on it, I generally in the top section will only put a like sweatshirt or something in there. And so you can put a laptop if you want or an iPad, but generally I just will put like a sweatshirt in there. And so nothing really valuable is in the top there. But once you cover this over, this flap ends up hiding the lock so that it doesn't really draw attention. But you can definitely overstuff that bag and fit a lot of gear in there. But when I walk around with a backpack like that, where I might have something that might be accessible from the top, I'm a bit more careful, and instead of wearing it behind me, if I'm in a city or in a train station especially, I'll wear it in front of me. Because you always want to know where your bags are, and you always want to be aware of who's close to your pockets, what hands are close to your pockets, or if you have a jacket that closes up, zips up, maybe put your wallet inside of a pocket like on the inside, but if it's open and somebody maybe sees you doing that, you also need to be careful about that. And some other items worth looking into are wallets or passport holders that protect against RFID skimmers. Some people say these work, some people say they don't. Everybody who I know who owns one of these says they're great. And it's something I've been looking into. I just haven't found one in a style that is quite the right fit for me. I'm very picky. But at train stations, this would be the places in Italy and all around Europe for that matter, that I would say it's probably better to be a little bit extra careful. Recently, somebody messaged me on Instagram and I was saying, just be careful around the train stations. They said, well, why would I need to be like, of course, I'm always like careful, but why would I need to be extra careful around the train stations? And probably the best way for me to put it is that I wouldn't hang around a train station for longer than necessary for the same reason that I might not hang around a Greyhound bus station back in the US. A lot of train stations in Italy do have a park close by, and oftentimes those parks or the area around the train station isn't the best place to be at night. If you can avoid it, if you are in those areas, it's better to just pass through, not really hang out there more than necessary. I'll talk a bit more about scams a little bit later on in the video, but while we're on the subject of train stations, one really common scam that you might find is if you're going to one of the ticket machines where you do it yourself, where you can actually do it in English. That's something that's great to know if you're coming to Italy. If you can't find somebody behind the counter who speaks English, very often you can go up to a kiosk and it'll just have an English option. Although I will say the translations aren't always the best. And you may need to search for the Italian name of the city, not the English name of the city, because there's a difference between almost all of them. But if you're at one of those ticket machines and somebody comes over to help you, sometimes they'll be dressed quite nicely. Don't accept the help. just kind of stay focused on what you're doing. Keep an eye on your bags. Be very aware of where the bags are. What can happen is that you might find one of these people that seems really friendly and really helpful, but they might be there distracting you, and somebody else comes in, maybe grabs something from your pocket, tries to grab something from a backpack. It's one of these things to be aware of. I've heard of friends having this happen to them in New York when they were at Grand Central, or even something that I know happens also in New York as well as here in Italy, is that you'll have people who will come and offer to help you with your bags, help push the cart, or help carry things. In my opinion, never trust anybody with your bags. You don't know what they're going to do. And especially if they seem like they're in better shape than you and could probably run a bit faster than you, even less of a reason to trust someone with your bags, even if they are heavy. If you're traveling by train in Italy, bring the minimal amount of suitcases possible. Really, if you've got one normal suitcase and a carry-on, that's probably the maximum you really want to take. And even then, that's still pushing it, because you may or may not be able to have your bag close by to you. But usually, more often than not, you can figure out a way of getting your bag close to you. It might be good to actually bring a lock so you can lock your bag to other bags of people that you're traveling with, or to the actual rack itself. Because if you don't keep an eye on your bags and you're just leaving it in the rack on the train by the door, and you're not keeping such a close eye on it, there is the potential that it could get stolen, and it's not something that's unheard of. And even on the trains, they say, keep an eye on your bag. I think even on one train I saw, you leave your bags here at your own risk or something like that. But going back to the purchasing the tickets, in some train stations, and I've noticed this is happening more and more now, you will see that there is a larger police presence. So some of these scams are happening less and less, but there are, of course, those pockets where the police or train representatives don't go. But if you're purchasing the ticket and you're near a kiosk at larger stations, you will sometimes find customer service representatives from Trenitalia or Italo. Usually they'll be wearing a uniform, and you can tell pretty clearly it's a uniform. And also they'll be wearing a vest, and it'll usually say something with the logo of the company and like customer service on the back. But if you find one of these people that's clearly in one of these uniforms, then that's fine. But sometimes these scammers will try to dress up in outfits somewhat similar. One thing though, for sure, especially if you're from a smaller town, you might be used to leaving your phone out on the table. Don't do that. Just don't do that most places. Like, that's really not the greatest idea, especially if you have a nicer phone. Although I would say that there are parts of Italy where that is not anything to even think about. Like where I live in my small city, people leave their phones out on the table and don't even think about it. I've seen people walk away from their phones and come back and nobody touches it. Where I live is actually very safe, but I would say this is the exception, probably not the rule. But just like if you're going to Rome, Milan, anywhere, like you would in America, if you're going to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, you wouldn't leave your phone out on the table either. But when you're going around and you're out and about, you will also be needing to pay for things. In Italy, it is always a good idea to have cash on you. There are a lot of places that don't like to take cards, even though Italy is becoming a lot more card friendly. And there are a lot of places where it's like you can pay for things quite easily with a card. There are still places that they just only want cash. Even if they do still give you a receipt, they just don't want to deal with the headache of a credit card machine. But when you're paying for things, it's always better to use the closest denomination to the amount that you're paying for. For example, if you're paying for something that's like €9.50, pay with a 10 or pay with exact change, rather than using a 20 or a 50. Or when I was in Rome with my cousin, I just wanted to get like a little keychain. Where I live, I could use a €50 bill on a small item that's just a couple of euros, and nobody would think twice about it. Here, it's a lot more accepted, but when I was in Rome and I tried to do the same thing, I didn't have small change on me because the ATM wouldn't give me smaller money. I tried to pay with that, and the one was like, no, we don't take that kind of money here. I was like, but it's money. Like, all right, whatever. So always carry cash with you, coins. If you are wanting to pay with a card or contactless, I would say it's very worth asking before you get to that point of having to pay, if you can pay with a card or if you can pay with contactless. I would prefer personally using a contactless system. So if you have a choice between tapping your card or using like something like Apple Pay, maybe go for that Apple Pay. But that's just my opinion. You do what you gotta do. You can say in Italian, posso pagare con contactless, and people will understand what that means. Carrying cash. Try not to carry a ton of cash in a place that's so easily seeable. Maybe if you have money with you in your wallet, carry only the amount that you would need for that outing and keep the rest of your money in a safer space, like in a money belt, for example. Or if you're walking around, it's worth investing in like a little just change purse. This was €3 and it's lasted me for quite a while. I use this all the time, and I use this for when I just want to pay for something that's really cheap, because coins are definitely something that are used here, because you will have denominations like 1 cent, 2 cent, 10 cent, 20 cent, 50 cent, €1 and €2. And those €1 and €2 do get used quite often, especially on smaller payments. And continuing on that same thought, if you're wanting to pay with cash, if you do decide to visit an ATM in Italy or anywhere in the world, any city, anywhere, I would say it's always good to check to make sure that it looks like a normal ATM machine. And even if it does look like a normal ATM machine, give things a little jiggle just to make sure that there's not like a false front on the machine, or that there's not a false skimmer that's on top of the normal skimmer, because that is something that does exist. I've personally never dealt with it, but I have been in places where I've seen them pulling off a false front from an ATM machine. And in this next section, let's talk about some of the ways that people might try to help you lose that money that you've just taken out of that ATM. Everywhere you go, you will find all different kinds of scams. There's plenty of videos on these subjects all over YouTube, so I'm only going to talk about a few of the ones that I've personally seen. The number one thing is, I would say, be careful of aggressive beggars, even children. It's such a sad, horrible thing to even think about, but I've had a situation where I had a camera bag on my back and a tripod attached to my camera bag. One kid came over asking for some cash, and I was like, I had a little bit of a weird feeling about it, but I was like, whatever. I reached into my pocket. I gave the kid a couple of coins, but I could feel this tugging on my back. And I kept walking, and I was walking for maybe a block or two at this point, and I kept feeling this tugging, and the kid was walking behind me with another friend of his. And I was like, I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I realized that they were trying to steal the tripod off of my backpack. So was that a dumb decision on my part to have my backpack behind my back with a tripod that could have been pulled off? Yeah, but learn from my mistake. I know I have. But sometimes what will happen is that you will have one person who may be asking you for money or for directions or asking you a question or trying to get your attention somehow, kind of keeping your attention on them, while a partner or a couple of partners may try to get into your pocket or into your bag, whatever it may be, like we were talking about before. From everything that I've seen, a lot of these smaller crimes seem to be committed in teams. Very rarely does it ever really seem to be just one person on their own. Even if it's just one person by themselves, it could be a team of people kind of working an area. There's another really horrible and really sad scam that I've seen out there that generally involves what seems to be a young mother and what appears to be her child. I'm not going to go into this one in my video. I believe Walter's World and ADV China have gone into this one. It's really scary, and what happens with these mothers and these children, it's absolutely horrifying. Anyway, I won't go into that in this video, but if you're out and about on the street and you're doing a bit of shopping, you will more than likely find a street vendor, maybe someone who has a stand or maybe a cart or a truck. The stands, carts, and trucks that maybe there's a few of them around, those are generally a little bit more reliable, and you don't really have to worry about those as much. Some of those places will actually give you a proper legal receipt for things, but there are those vendors that you will find sometimes that maybe just have their goods laid out on a blanket on the sidewalk somewhere, and sometimes there'll be items that look really nice. Maybe you might find something that looks like Louis Vuitton, Dolce & Gabbana, a Rolex, this or that, but it's getting better and better. I haven't seen so much of this in recent years, especially in Italy with Italian brands, but you will find a lot of fakes and replicas, for lack of a better term, of some of these items that maybe people might be coming here to purchase. But I'm just going to say it like this. If it looks like a Rolly and they're selling it for 50 euros, my dude, that ain't no Rolly. Very unlikely. But why do they put things out on the blankets? It's because that, again, there could be maybe a team of people working together with spotters on either end of a street. And if somebody's coming in the direction that they may not want to see, for example, a police officer, then one guy gives a signal to the next. They wrap up everything in the blanket or sheet, whatever it may be, and they hightail it. Actually, one thing I've seen in Madrid a number of times is they've got a system worked out there. The guys that sell their goods out on the streets, they have like these canvas cloths, and on each of the corner has a rope attached to it, and then they have like something that goes around the rope where they all pass through, so that it's kind of like if you're wearing like a hoodie or something so you can easily cinch it up, and kind of so they grab it and run. But I have to say, it's almost impressive to see how fast these guys are able to cinch up their bags and run for it. Anyway, different subject for a different day. But in general, be careful if somebody comes up to you and tries to sell you something. What you will see is that often maybe somebody might come up to you and try to put a bracelet on you, or try to give you a flower or an amulet or a necklace. They'll actually put it on you and force it on you. I've seen this happen where they push women into these sort of sketchy situations, and like they like grab the woman's wrist and like they quickly tie the bracelet on and then start demanding money. Often they'll say, "Oh no, it's just a gift, but please just give me a donation." But it's not a donation. And what can happen often is that they'll just keep hounding you. And then even if you try to hand it back to them, never accept it. If someone grabs your wrist, that's not cool. Rip your wrist away from them, scream and shout. There's nothing wrong with that, because what they're doing to you is definitely wrong. If you've got to act a little crazy to get them off your back, maybe act a little crazy. But no matter what, do not accept it, do not hold it, do not anything. And even if you do, don't throw it on the ground, because that'll end up making them even angrier and just demand that you pay for something that's broken then. I've even seen in certain situations, maybe somebody has threatened to give a curse if the person didn't pay, or a blessing if the person did pay them. You see all different sorts of things depending on where in Europe you are. And then also, don't say no thank you. Don't speak your language to them. If you're in Italy, for example, just say no, not no. No, with it's N-O, but with a glottal stop, because that's how it's said in Italian. No. Simple as that. Try to lose the American accent if at all possible. I've seen some people get a little bit more pushy with North American tourists and also Asian tourists. And of course, while you're traveling around, you're going to want to take pictures. You might take some selfies, whatever it might be. You'll want to have those memories to keep for a future date. And sometimes what you might find is maybe somebody in a costume and somebody that's with them there will offer to take your picture, but you'll have to pay for that. And sometimes what might actually happen is if you give someone your camera, which you should never do, or your phone, whatever it might be, they might actually hold it ransom and refuse to give you back your phone or camera, whatever it might be, until you've actually paid them. I've heard of anything from like 10 euros, 15 euros, 20 euros. I've even heard of people like being scammed for 50, 100, 200 euros without any police around. So never hand off your camera to somebody unless it's maybe like a little old lady or something. They seem to usually be pretty safe. In general, I would say it's better not to hand off your camera unless you know the person, and don't take a picture with someone in a costume like a gladiator, Elmo, whoever it may be. In a lot of places, this actually has been banned. Like I believe in Rome, that dressing up as a gladiator and taking pictures with people has actually been banned, but people still do it anyway. There are some of these things that get enforced and some of these things that just don't seem to really get enforced as much, unfortunately. All right, so my number one tip for those of you who have waited to the end of this video, my absolute top tip is, if you're American, be less American. I hate to put it like that, but that's probably the general guideline. If you're German, be less German. If you're French, be less French. Try not to fit into the stereotypes of your fellow countrymen, women, people. You know what I mean. American tourists and Asian tourists, in my opinion, seem to be the ones that stick out the most. You'll want to try and match the way that the locals dress as much as possible. You may not dress that way yourself, but sometimes it's worth maybe wearing something a little bit different than what you might be used to wearing. Like, for example, like the one thing that really gives away a tourist is a I Love Rome t-shirt or a I Love Venice, a location shirt. That just gives away you're a tourist. Baseball caps are another one of those things that are like you can almost guarantee the person is probably American. And also maybe consider wearing some more subdued colors, maybe not such bright, flashy colors, because those will also attract more attention to you. And maybe not just attract people who you might be interested in attracting attention from, but maybe also those people who might have not such great intentions. Another thing that will make a person stand out as a foreigner is, especially if they're traveling in a group and you're speaking a foreign language, especially it seems as though Americans have a tendency to speak quite loudly and almost be kind of almost in a boisterous sort of way. I really don't mean to be talking down on Americans here, but I'm just saying these are some of the things that people start to notice about us when we're away. Just something to be careful about. Maybe talk a little bit more quietly, talk a little bit more reserved with your mannerisms and not quite as big and loud. Even when you're in Italy, a place where big and loud is something that might not be so uncommon, there is a different type of bigness and loudness out here. And especially in the north, I would say in Italy, people may be a little bit more reserved than what you might initially think. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful and or informative, and if you've got any of your own tips, feel free to leave that down in the comment section below. Of course, this is always an open conversation, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down there as well. And of course, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad and traveling abroad, be sure to subscribe to this channel with the notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like and share it with your friends, that would be greatly appreciated, as it does help out the channel. And if you would like to help out this channel in another way to help make more content like this possible, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon to help on a monthly basis, rafaeldefuria.com/support to just help out once, or rafaeldefuria.com/NYAG gear for shirts, baby onesies, mugs, and more with Italy-centric designs like pizza, pasta, and amore. That's it, I'm moving to Italy, and more. Thank you again for those of you who've been helping to make content like this possible. Thank you for those of you who've made it this far into the video and joining me on another beautiful Friday night. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a great week ahead of you, and I look forward to seeing you all next Friday. And as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia, and I'll see you all next time. Later.